Hi and welcome to Say What's Up Gaming. My name is Charlie and today I am super excited because I am speaking to Shelby, who is going to be telling us all about his exciting new zombie-based game, but with a difference. So with that, Shelby, would you like to introduce yourself and tell us a little bit about you?
Yeah, absolutely. Hello, I am Shelby Matussak, and I am the owner of Dead Lemon Games. Just recently formed out of the pandemic last year in August of 2020. And I am the creator of Lonely Undead, like Charlie had said. And I have just woken up and I'm drinking coffee.
The correct way to start the day and the only way to start the day, I think. I do have a question for you about coffee. We'll come on to that later. However, let's talk about your game. So I have an early prototype that I'm very excited to get into as soon as possible. Let's start with the big question. What is this game? What's it about?
Yeah, so Lonely Undead, it is a zombie-themed adventure crawler. And I use the word, some people are like, what's an adventure crawler? And I didn't even actually know that there was such a term for sort of like a genre for games called like an adventure sort of game. But I think it's more of an umbrella sort of thing. But I didn't want to use the word dungeon crawler because I didn't like the idea of the game taking place in a specific setting because it's actually sort of in a town. Just a little preface there. But Lonely Undead, like I said, a zombie-themed crawler in which for 1 to 4 players, plays in around an hour to an hour and a half, depending on the different game modes and how many people are playing. It is playable for 1 to 4 players. So there are solo modes, competitive modes, and cooperative modes. And some things about Lonely Undead that really sort of set it aside and make it special that I really focused on with the theme, because as a zombie-themed game, obviously, there is a very heavy market and a very flooded market, some would say. And some people might turn the other cheek at even the mention of a zombie game. So what I wanted to really do with Lonely Undead was basically breathe new life into the theme and the genre and take all those recycled stereotypes with zombie games and completely flip the script on them and do everything different. So Zombie Undead, in a lot of ways, is sort of like a reverse sort of zombie theme game. And it does a lot of things that the other zombie games of the past didn't do. Basically does the opposite.
It's really exciting. I know when I first became aware of the game and someone said, oh, it's a zombie game. And I was like, it'll be a sort of Resident Evil or a Left 4 Dead style game. But it's got a really great twist on it that's have a sort of an underlying theme of friendship, isn't it? That's the sort of, you're biting to make friends with people rather than to cause any terror or damage or otherwise we have to killing the zombies in the first place.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's I mean, obviously one of the biggest twists is that instead of playing, humans, you are playing the zombies. And then along with that, in a normal zombie game, what you thought of, what most people think of when they hear zombie game, all those stereotypes pop into their head. And they think that, you're a human, you're like, either you're barricading yourself up and trying to get shelter and food and or like weapons to kill zombies. You might be like, going through and bashing in the brains of zombies or like, equipping guns and like, going through and slaughtering hordes of zombies. But that's not what I wanted to do at all with Lonely Undead. I wanted to flip it, throw it on the zombies' perspective, and instead you play with this zombie through their eyes, and they've been recently infected. It's not in the middle of some sort of zombie apocalypse event. All these people that they're interacting with in this town, these other living people a lot of them have no idea what's really going on. It's the beginning of an event. So that's some other things that are a little bit different. And I really wanted, instead of this sort of like violent, gory sort of atmosphere, I wanted it to be really fun and lighthearted. And instead of the focus being on like killing or eating brains, even from the zombies' perspective, I wanted people to sort of like envision and embody what it would be like to sort of be a zombie that just turned. And so I wanted people to sort of sympathize with these zombies. They're lonely, they're scared, they don't know what to do, but they're seeking comfort and they're seeking friendship and solidarity. And the only way they know how to make friends, unfortunately, for some people, is to attack, bite, and infect the locals, therefore making them zombies just like themselves so they can have someone to talk to.
It's quite funny, like it's a humanizing aspect in the fact that they want friends, and that's something that we can all empathize with, and we all want to make more friends and speak to more people and enjoy ourselves. But at the same time, we're not infected with something that makes us want to bite other people. So that's a quite interesting. Did you start out with the idea of that and then build from there? Or did you have an idea of sort of making a adventure crawler game and then find the theme later on? Which came first?
I would definitely say probably the latter, mostly, but I really did work the theme hand in hand with a lot of the design. I'm really new to game design, and I basically, when I started the project, of course, I had like some loose ideas and loose mechanisms, and I like to, when starting my design, I usually do a lot of scribble, so I'll just have pages of text, and that no one could ever follow but me, and so. I had all these pages of text, and as I'd mentioned a little bit before we got started, I had all this free time after being laid off in the pandemic, and I started to like focus on creative outlets in the game, and I started to work with sort of developing it a little bit further, and then I was like, oh, it'd be cool to kind of like do like a zombie thing. I think at the time, I don't remember, there was some media out that maybe had inspired me a little bit. But I was like, yeah, maybe I'll do like a sort of a zombie thing. And I'd actually like talked to a couple of the creators and some friends about it. And they gave me the feedback that like, oh, another zombie game, like that's not, you're not going to stand out. Like there's nothing that you can, sort of do with that. Like obviously there's still a big fan base and a big market for zombie games and zombie media. It's still really hot. However, like, I think that with the board game market, and especially going through Kickstarter, is people really like to see and really draw towards sort of fresh and new ideas and interesting, unique sort of components, and also themes and design. And so I actually had some pushback on using the theme, and I was like, wait, no. I had some of these ideas where I wanted to kind of like change it and make it from the zombies' perspective and kind of focus on that. And so that's where I actually decided I had to stick with the zombie theme, because I needed to show people that you can do something different with something that may be sort of worn out. I wanted to show people you can be creative with some of these things and sort of take something that might be flooded or sort of worn out and just do some things differently, have some fun with it. And I decided to change all those things and work that hand in hand through the design process. I feel kind of lucky in it, and I don't know if a lot of other designers like work that way, but I basically like made a list of all the sort of things that I wanted to make sure the game had before I started like fully designing a lot of it. I wanted to make sure that I had like dedicated like solo, cooperative, and competitive modes from the beginning, instead of adding those things later on as like, stretch goals for the Kickstarter campaign. And because a lot of people, I read a lot that a lot of those games, when they try to do that sort of thing, they just like sort of half-ass a solo mode and just kind of add it on to the game a little bit later, and it's like a beat your own score sort of thing, or it's not a fully dedicated mode and it feels kind of weak and forced. And I didn't want to do anything like that, so I had a nice little set of ideas at the beginning that helped guide a lot of my design, and it caused it worked out really well in some aspects, and of course it caused problems in others, but it was fun to work through those as I was going through the process.
I'm totally with you on the solo mode from the start logic. It's something, it's a real personal preference. I know that there's anyone can argue any way about it, but for me, you can tell a difference between the games that have built in a solo mode as they're building it to be able to then play those nicely, and then the ones that are sort of like tacked on where it's gone, oh no, I need a solo mode because we're in a pandemic, how do I fix this? And then try and play those, and they're just not comfortable to play. But I've seen, from what I've seen of yours so far, it sets itself up really well in a solo mode, because you get the same enjoyment out of it that you do out of the sort of multiplayer versions with it too. So that's a really nice, exciting sort of area to go through. So how did this come about? Where did you get to the stage where you went, right, I would like to create a board game and I'm going to create Dead Lemon Games? Because you went the whole hog. You didn't just pitch it. We've also got a brand new publisher. How did that come about?
Yeah, so I had as I've kind of mentioned, I was out of work. I had a bunch of free time on my hands, and I was trying to basically decided I wanted to focus on creative outlets and keep myself sane and to not slip into any sort of depression during the weirdness. This was back in March 2020. And so I started to focus on things like music and art and design, and really started to buckle down on this idea for a game. And I had dabbled in a couple of other like game designs in the past, some fun trivial things, some like, just things with friends, and a couple of like more serious ideas that didn't come to full fruition. But so yeah, I started to really dive into Lonely Undead, and I started to work on sort of developing some of it. And then I made a paper prototype. I took a week and wrote everything out on pieces of paper and cut everything out and drew up a board, and started to play it with some of my close friends, and it got good rapport. Like, it was really interesting because I think I kind of got lucky with some of my design, and maybe this maybe like going back through all those pages of text, and really thinking a lot beforehand to kind of helped out. But first couple of times playing it, like, it played decently, like it played, which is always like the first time you play a prototype, you're like, okay, we could start playing, and like it could not work at all. Like, you could just do the first like sort of like mood or turn or phase, and you're like, wow, that's a mistake. That's not going to work at all. But it played, and it played decently, and it was a lot of fun. So I was like, oh, cool. So I got excited and started to work on it more and develop more enriched theme and more enriched lore, and started playing with more people. And it got to the point where people were like, are you making this? Are you going to make this a thing? Like, I want this game. Like, I'd get that. I'd be like, well, I've thought about it, and of course, if you know anything about of like sort of the publishing world of board games, is there's basically a lot of times there's two ways to go about it. You can like self-publish, which is basically forming a company and an entity to which to do it with, or you can pitch to a publisher. And there's pros and cons to both. Basically, in a lot of ways, like pitching to a publisher is a lot easier in a lot of ways, because you release a lot of the responsibility of the business side and the logistics side of the design onto a company that already knows how to do it. On the other, one of the major cons of that is you release a lot of creative freedom, and you may get a really kind of cruddy, mediocre deal as far as what you get from the game itself from selling it. And then on the other side, when you self-publish, you have to form a company and work underneath it. And you got to basically like either yourself or have a team of individuals to do all of the business side. And it's basically like an exponentially larger amount of work and responsibility. And of course, that's not what I wanted to do at all. And so I was going to pitch it, and started working towards pitching it. And I have a good friend and buddy. He's actually a partner of mine now, that as we were playing and talking one evening and several evenings after that, after play testing, he was like, what else do you have going on? Like, you should just do it yourself. And I was like, no, man, like I don't know what my future looks like. I don't know, like it's a lot of work. I don't know if I want to do all that work. And I was like, he'd be like, you can do it. And I'd be like, no, man, like I there's so much artwork and there's all this stuff. And he's like, you can do the artwork. I know you can. And I'm like, dude, like, and this went on for a little bit. And I was like, okay, well, I'm encouraged, I'm encouraged. I'm inspired. So I spent like 2 weeks, and I really dug into some research to really kind of see what all it might take, right? The whole process. One thing I definitely, something about my character, which I'm glad I have it, is that I like to really do my due diligence and my research towards most things I do. I don't really like to jump into things kind of like, sort of half informed. Yeah. I want to try to be as informed as possible, especially with decisions that, have such weight to them. So a couple of weeks of research, and I was like, you know what, maybe I can do this. Maybe I'll give it a shot. And then that led to the formation of the company, Dead Lemon Games, and also led to the months of stress and hard work that I have put in to this Kickstarter launch here in a week, which is absolutely insane.
I have to say that passion that you mentioned really comes through. This is one of the, so I see a fair few prototypes, and this is one of the most sort of almost lovingly put together. Everything has been thought of. Like, it's very clear you've done it really nicely. Prototypes that I think I've seen. So I opened it. I was like, yeah, everything in it comes across how passionate you are about the game and about going, right, I can do this and I'm going to make this happen, which is really nice to see.
Yeah, I'm glad you said that. I have had some feedback being like, well, this is a really good looking prototype. We get a lot of like sort of like, a little lower quality on prototypes, so surprised to get this. And I was just like,
interesting prototypes. This one is.
I'm glad the prototype is making you happy. Remember that when the campaign launches.
When I go to review it and I'm like, right, no, but it's really pretty.
Yeah. This is a great looking prototype.
It was. All is good. No, I'm glad. It's so with that then you're moving then on to Kickstarter, which you've mentioned. What was the decision to go for Kickstarter over sort of just trying to put the game straight out there?
Yeah, so like obviously, like since I'm a one-man show with my organization with Dead Lemon Games, and the business side of things, like obviously, you know, a lot of times in forming a business, there's certain steps you can go through to make things either easier or more difficult, depending on how much work and how much resources you have. And if you have a decent amount of resources and a dedicated amount of people, maybe a couple people or 3 people to help you out, and maybe you can look into maybe getting some investors and getting enough funding and enough sort of mobility and enough momentum to, you know, go ahead and purchase a print run of a game, you know, right out. And however, me being just the one-man show and my limited resources and finances, especially in the height of the pandemic when meeting people and trying to gather resources and support was extremely difficult, I looked towards Kickstarter and it looked like such a great avenue. One of the things that I think is so brilliant about the Kickstarter model and something that works well for first-time creators is that you can sort of build up this momentum and this fan base, this like sort of following audience to be excited about getting the game before it's even made. So those sort of people that are passionate, share your passion about the project, can be like, yeah, this looks like something that I would like. I can see your passion, just like you mentioned, Charlie, and I want to help support, make your dream a reality. And so those are the individuals that then back the campaign. And they're backing it, like not knowing fully exactly, you know, what the final product might be or when it might get to them, which is a leap for sure. It's a leap of faith, but that's where the passion comes in. And that's where the support and something so beautiful about Kickstarter. And then those individuals help fund that first print run to get those games out into the world, basically through a sort of, you know, pre-order system in a lot of ways with supporting that creator's dream and that creator's passion project. So you got to build up all these individuals that want the game before it even exists. And then they feel differently about it. It's not like an individual that goes and like you're shopping and you're just like, you know, looking at games and you're just like trying to find something to fill a weird void, right? It's like I've seen Shelby work on this game for months. Like I was a part of the process, maybe during the creative spiel. I'm a part of it now, and I want to support this passion. And so when it goes to Kickstarter, I want to be there to be a part of that idea. And I really like that. I love that. I love that sense of community, that sense of sort of like gathering and fostering that passion. And I love supporting like local businesses and small businesses as well. So the model really spoke to me in a lot of ways. So.
Yeah, I think especially as a backer, I always find that I feel more emotionally invested myself in backing games that come out because I'm like, I had a part of it before it was even printed. I was there and I saw the artwork change and I saw the name change or any of the little extras, or I was there when they were having problems getting the shipping containers out of China. Whatever update comes through.
Let's not talk about those. Those aren't going to happen.
That's a problem for later.
Yes.
How some of my Kickstarter pledges at the minute are at that stage, but still, we talk about community. That's a really nice sort of place to be in, and I equally find exactly the same. The board game community is wonderful, and we're an excitable bunch. I like to think we see something cool and we're like, this is amazing. And how have you found it in terms of the support from the community? Have you had people enjoying it? Have you had it out to play testers? What's been the response so far?
Yeah, of course, like I'd mentioned, this was all formed during the pandemic. So all of my support and a lot of my base, not to say all of it, but I mean, easily 95% has all been fostered through the online communities. So being active in forums and very active in Facebook and trying to foster sort of some community around my brand, and then as well as the game. And also like just, it's been such a very helpful avenue as far as getting support. As I mentioned, a first-time creator and a first-time Kickstarter campaign creator, there's a litany of pitfalls that comes with the process. Not only like pitfalls and things and to watch out for and things to like be aware of as far as logistics and planning and all these little details that people can easily miss. It's really nice to have those communities to reach out for. But there's, on top of that, there's also things that people don't think about, like the emotional support, like the support beyond like questions about like, oh my goodness, like I don't even know how to like set up a Google Pixel to track this ad when I do an A/B test. Like that's a whole wormhole of that I hate diving into. But there's also the side of it where it's where like, man, I'm going through a rough time in my design phase. Like I'm really disheartened. I have no motivation. Like, what do you guys do? And then this mountain of support sort of pulls out from that. And people are like, you know, these are things that I do to help me kind of get through those times. You know, you get people that are supportive and be like, keep your head up, keep pushing. You got something going here. And that's just really nice and really lovely. The communities have been extremely helpful, and there's no way that Lonely Undead would be here without those forums and those communities helping me along the way, helping me answer questions, getting feedback on art, getting feedback on design aspects and certain mechanics. They have like basically ushered and helped me create the game completely, and that helps foster the community around the project. And then, like we had just talked about, how that sort of moves into supporting the Kickstarters. Those individuals have been a part of the game throughout the entire process.
So how are you feeling about the Kickstarter then? Are you more excited or more nervous, or where are you at with that?
I'm terrified.
Oh, bless you.
I feel like it's been kind of weird this last week, actually last couple weeks, because I've had these like really big highs and lows in my emotions, my anxiety, and also my my workflow has been really thrown off and weird, because I've had a couple of days where I'd be super unmotivated and I sit down to try to get some work done. And I'll be like, oh, I need to do this. And what do I want to do? I want to do none of this. And like, be like, and I can't work. And which is really bad, because on the other side of the coin, like, I know that I need to do so much work. Like, it's like, yeah. I'm super unmotivated. I don't want to do anything, but it's like, oh my gosh, like I have a mountain of things to do. And so I think that sort of stress and anxiety has been like building in the back of my head and causing all these other sort of trials along with the process. I am super stoked about launching. I am extremely nervous about launching. It's hard for me to tell just how it's going to go and how well it might go or not well. And I think that's what's really frightening and terrifying, is that I also see a lot and follow a lot of other campaigns through the forums and see a lot of success and a lot of people doing some of the same things I'm doing. And maybe I see like, you know, a lot of other rapport, or like someone posts something about their campaign that's about to launch and you have like 30 comments. Yeah. And I'm like, that's so great, you know? And then like, you know, maybe I don't have the same amount of rapport with a similar post, but like, and then so that sort of like gets to me a little bit. I'm like, so there's a lot of sort of working through, like emotionally sort of figuring out, like not letting things get to you, staying focused, staying on track, and not using like, you know, comparison models that really don't have any sort of parallel or anything like that. And really just doing you. That's one thing that I've been having to remind myself over and over, is just like, hey, just, you know, do what you feel is right. Stay in your heart. Like just keep going. And sorry.
It's that cat.
This is Mochi Gato. He's just hanging.
Oh, look at him.
He literally jumped right over my computer.
I just saw a fluff and was like, whoa.
Yeah. This is the garage. It's his domain. So
you're in his territory now. There's oh, for goodness.
Yes. Where was I? Oh, yes. So yeah, I'm nervous and I'm excited. And I keep telling myself that, you know, hey, like, don't set up expectations. I'm not one of those people where I don't think, and this may hurt me, but I'm not one of those people where it's like, I gotta push as hard as I can right at the beginning. And I mean, I do know that it's really important to try to like fund as quick as possible, because it sets up a momentum and it helps you a lot. But like, I'm trying not to stress out about like expectations for getting so much funding in the first like 24 hours, in the first 48 hours, in the first 72. I'm just going to be stoked if I fund. and that's where I'm setting my expectation is like the lowest, right? Funding goal. Like that would be the best. And then, if more things come after that, every dollar after that obviously is going towards improvements on the game, is going towards stretch goals, is going towards making the project he stepped right on the keyboard, making the project like as best as possible and stable as possible, and getting it to those people that support me. So
lovely. So speaking of those, then the sort of like every penny that you get extra will go into sort of more stuff for the game. Have you got anything in mind with the game that you're like, great, if I could, I'd do this to it, or I'd add this bit? What would be the sort of stretch goals or sort of upgrades that you maybe offer in the Kickstarter? You thought that far ahead?
I'm definitely doing a lot. Obviously, I'm trying to do a lot of quality improvements. Not a lot, because I did want to try to. I kind of was on the fence with as I had said earlier. I from the get-go, there was things that I really wanted to dedicate and really try to do with the design, and that also may hurt me in the long run, because a lot of people, when as I was developing, I was trying to develop all these different modes and all these different ideas and make it as accessible and streamlined as possible. And of course, it created 2 different versions of the game, or even 3 different versions, and that's great a lot of time for Kickstarters, because you can make a base version and a deluxe version. But I didn't want to separate my audiences or separate people's like pocketbooks, and I really wanted people to I wanted to try to give everything to everybody. So I really tried to do it as best I could to make the best game possible now, and just start off with that, start off with those dedicated modes and start off with as much as I could. So there's going to be obviously the normal sort of, quality increases to components, some bump on some thickness here and some weight here, and, maybe increasing. There's character cards that are like basically like kind of jumbo cards, but they are almost a card stock right now. I would love to increase the quality of those to make them thicker and a little bit more durable, just to have more substance to them. They work fine as where they are, but people like, a little bit more substance, and they like, more player sort of boards. And then the things that I'm most excited about, and I would love to actually add to the game now, is content, and not just more like cards, because that's sort of a normal thing. And that's obviously something I'm going to do and would like to do. I want to add more characters more living people that you can sort of encounter, because they have very distinctive personalities. And I want to add more like sort of resources that people can, draw from to make themselves sort of stronger and add different elements of the game. But I want to as I said, like with designing from the beginning, there were things I wanted to do, and I wanted to make it very easily expandable and make these systems so you could sort of build on top of them very easily. So the game that you're getting is a very sort of base game. It's very simple to try to hop into. It actually has a double-sided board. So one side is really easy to jump into and streamline and just play really quickly. And then the other side is another version with polyomino little pieces that make up the town. You can kind of build your own town, adds another layer of depth and another layer of strategy in which to play within for heavier gamers. So that was an element that I wanted to work with, so people can just hop right in for a quick game, or they can have a longer game, more strategy if they're a heavier gamer. But then the system in play, like I said, with the co-op and the solo mode, I want to, and I already started sort of building and sort of writing up, expandable materials and content for those modes, like such as a scenario pack for the co-op game. So you can sort of like have a number of scenarios and objectives you could play through with a team when you go into co-op, and you could easily just kind of drop into each scenario depending on the number of players. Also, I wanted to build up a solo campaign. So essentially, you have your normal sort of solo mode that you can kind of hop into and play. But then also I wanted to build up some writing and some lore and some narrative where you kind of go through missions one after the other, and it works in like a timeline with the flow of the story. So you play as the different characters for each mission, and they kind of like start becoming around each other, and they kind of, their stories are all happening at the same time. So I would love to get, those are sort of higher stretch goals, that additional content, because obviously it's a lot harder and it takes a lot more work to develop, but I would love to be able to offer that as part of the base game. Not only to give people more things to do with the game, to add to the replayability and to make it more accessible for different audiences and make it more versatile. But also, I would love to build more with Lonely Undead. I think it just has such an expandable universe that those little starter packs for those missions and scenarios can kind of help set a precedent to help push the game maybe at another printing in another edition or an expansion later on. Which obviously I would love to see happen because that's the dream, right?
Yeah, that's always the hope. Yeah, I think that's a really nice thing that you said before about you're taking a new stance on a crowded market, a crowded genre of zombie games are a certain way, and suddenly you've got them going in a different way. And not only have you got the game that you've got, but also this opportunity for so much more. And like you say, expansions hopefully along the line if it's when you get to that stage, or even as part of this Kickstarter. And I love as well that you're sort of trying to keep everything as good as possible in the base game as it can be right now, because it also makes it much easier looking through a Kickstarter page and the pledge lists and trying to work out what's going on and what you need to pledge for. I know that I can go on there and I can get the game. That's the most important part, I think, for everyone involved. So with that then, if we talk back about the game itself, are there any games that you would say, if you like this game, you'll like Lonely Undead?
First off, I think that anybody that that likes zombies in general or zombie games, they're obviously like they're obviously going to be fascinated and they're going to enjoy Lonely Undead. It sort of has these elements of I drew inspiration from a number of some of my favorite games. One of them, I think, one of the games that I sort of drew a lot of inspiration from was Clank. This sort of crawler with your managing some deck aspects as well. And then as well as Munchkin, I was a real big Munchkin fan. It sort of was some of my like heavier gateway sort of opportunity, and utilizing these card systems for, adding stats or taking away stats and having this sort of inventory and sort of working through, opening doors and like a dungeon. In a way, Munchkin's like this like card-based sort of crawler in some aspects without, really personality. And then I definitely drew influence from Gloomhaven as well, because I love the idea of sort of like this, like building a role and sort of like, kind of building this character and having this personality, and you're moving through and you're sort of adding stats and adding resources to your personal character and sort of enveloping who they are. And I thought that went really hand in hand with sort of getting people to like really envision the perspective of the zombie really becoming who their character was, which I really like that idea. So I took these inspirations, little tiny bits from tabletop RPGs, little tiny bits from, dungeon crawlers, little tiny bits from like deck builders and hand management games. And those little tiny bits from like, inspiration from D&D with like stat management, and say like there's a chance modifier, like a combat sort of modifier. So when you do certain tests, you have to like, there's always an element of chance. Your stat may be higher than this person's stat when you're sneaking up on them, but like if you slip on a banana peel, maybe it doesn't work out so well. So I definitely drew inspiration, like little tiny bits from all of those little things, and kind of threw it into Lonely Undead. At the same time, I wanted to like really make it accessible for like, small groups and maybe even some families with teenagers to really sit down and dive into, and not be really heavy. I've gotten a lot of feedback where it's like, it seems like there's a lot of components and it seems really heavy, but it's really straightforward. And like, as soon as you like kind of jump in, it seems like a lot, but then you do like a play or halfway through and you're like, oh, it's really straightforward. It's streamlined. It seems like there's a lot going on, but it lends itself very nicely to flow through. So
would you go so far along the scale as to say it's a gateway game, or are we sort of in the sort of lighter to mid-weight? Where would you put it?
Yeah, I think that it lends itself. It could lend itself as a gateway game. I definitely have had some people say that it could be more of a gateway sort of game, and it could be like really like sort of easy for people to hop into. I had another creator say that it's basically, he said it's as heavy as you can get without being like called a heavy game, but like he said, it's as heavy as you can get, but still like get it, throw it on the table and just jump right in. Is what he said, and I love the way he said it. And so I think that it's easy to jump into, and that it can be utilized as a gateway game, but at the same aspect, there's a lot of fun, like more dense strategy that you sort of pick up on as you start to learn the game and certain mechanics. You're like, Oh, well, I had no idea that, this effect could be compounded with this effect. And maybe I could push this person into the street and then like maybe a car will come through. So there's these sort of advanced strategy combos that you kind of like learn about as you play. A lot of people, when they sit down, it's like, okay, A, B, C, D, I know exactly what I can do. I can move, I can do this, I can do that. And then they kind of like start playing and they play in a certain way. They only do those things and don't really think too much outside of that box. But as they start gathering certain resources and reading the cards, they're like, oh, there's some things going on here that I didn't see at surface level that, that was back in the reference guide or the appendix of the rule book that, I hadn't gotten to because it looked like a lot of text. And now it's coming out here and it creates a cool effect, and that's neat. So I want to see how that plays out,
I'm a big fan of those games because you finish and you go, right, I've got a new strategy now. Let's play again and let's work out.
Yeah. Now I know how to play.
Now I know how you play as well. So I'm going to play against you. I'm going to do it this way.
Yep.
I wanted to ask you just from sort of, we've only just received this. So I've had a glimpse through the rules and the components and such, but I haven't had a chance to play it yet. So I saw there were some limbs attached. So am I right in thinking you lose limbs as you go? What happens there?
Yeah, I wanted some sort of meter to essentially be not necessarily, this was it, at first, when I first thought of it, I was like, this is a problem, but I immediately had an answer and I thought it was so much fun. Is like, I wanted a meter for sort of like, life, but I was like, wait a second, my characters are undead. Like I can't really have a life meter. And then I was like, the answer came so quick and so obvious is that I would basically use limbs. So each character gets 4 limbs. And they're shaped like, they're little like feet and arms and stuff. I think they're one of the more fun components for sure.
Yeah.
And you get 4 of those limbs, and effects that happen to you during the game, such as like losing an attack test, or you can be attacked by a dog and they'll like take one of your limbs away from you. And so you'll lose these limbs through effects of the game, and they affect your ability to play. I don't know where in the game or the verbiage do I say like these limbs represent your life. I say they represent your ability to play. And I like people to really envision that like they're losing their limbs physically, right? So like they get attacked by a dog, they put the arm away, they lose an arm. So now they're a zombie going around with just a stub, right? And I love that visualization of like, oh my goodness, and I lost another arm. So now I'm just like walking around with just my legs. And then they may be down to 1 limb, and now all of a sudden they're like on the pavement, just like crawling with 1 arm, just friendship, and I love that visualization of that happening. And I think those components are so fun. And that I was very lucky that idea just like came so easily, and it lent itself very well to the fun sort of lighthearted theme and sort of all the thematic elements that I really wanted to sort of make this rich environment with. It lent itself very well.
Yeah, because just in case, I will clarify, this is not a gory game. When I've mentioned that there's limbs involved, I'm talking the cutest little pieces that go they caught my eye. That's the only reason I'm like, right, those ones, I'll ask about those ones. They're adorable.
The little severed limbs, yeah.
But there's nothing sort of like barrier to entry. If you don't like gore, you shouldn't play this. It's not that at all. It's a really light-hearted take on the genre instead. Isn't that right?
Yeah, absolutely. And I'm glad you brought that up, because that's definitely one of the things I really wanted to focus on, and one of those switches with the genre that I really wanted to change. Most zombie games, when you think about them or play them, there's a very serious, dark tone. There's violence and gore, and there's these visualizations, these visual cues, this verbiage and words surrounding violent aspects. And I didn't want any of that in the game at all. First off, it doesn't really mesh with what I'm trying to do. Second off, it's not part of my character when I write or design at all. I love to laugh. I love to have fun. I like lighthearted themes and jokes. And so I really wanted to take all those aspects of a darker theme or and gore and violence, and just try to eliminate them as much as possible. Obviously, I couldn't get rid of all of them, because what you are doing is you are trying to attack and bite and convert the locals. So those words are there, but the depiction of the visual cues, the imagery, and most of the verbiage, all those like cues for violence and gore, they're not there. It's more lighthearted, more cartoony. There's not a lot of direct relations to any violence really, besides like those words attack. And then in the imagery itself, I wanted to like make it really cartoony, lighthearted, humorous, and not depict a lot of like gore or blood or anything like that. So
yeah, makes it a good one that you feel like. I feel like I play with the slightly older family members, the slightly older young family members. I think that makes sense. Teenagers in the family, I could turn around and be like, hey, I've got a great game for you. It's got zombies in. We don't need to worry about sort of mum being cross. There's everything you could possibly need in there. And it should just be, like you say, a really light-hearted way to go through things, which is kind of...
Yeah, definitely. I would definitely say like families with teenagers, it's really good for. Like it's also really easy to kind of throw out and kind of jump in for those family groups. I wouldn't put it's 14 plus on the box. I mean, I think that maybe like 10 plus with some parental discretion might work in some aspects. But it is a lot to keep up with for a kid, and there could be some associations with some of the theme elements that might be interpreted as being a little heavy for a kid under 14. But definitely, like families with teenagers, I think it lends itself very well.
Brilliant. So with that, then tell me just about the Kickstarter. You are launching next week, I believe.
Oh yeah, I'm launching June 7th. I don't know when this will air. It might be airing when when the Kickstarter is running, which is fantastic. So yeah, June 7th is the launch date. It'll run for 29 days all the way to July 6th. And a very modest goal for sure for my first operation here. And yeah, I'm definitely stoked for it. And definitely come check it out.
Good. It's really exciting. Is there anything else you wanted to add at this point, or if we covered everything, is there anything you want to pop in as well? What are you thinking?
Yeah, this interview it's kind of brought some things to light that some of my other interviews, the sort of the notes and the tone that I didn't really feel a lot with some of the other interviews. And it's got me like really like sort of kind of like warm and fuzzy about the community. I mean, we've touched on it a couple of times, and I do highly appreciate all the support that I have gotten. And I think that's what I want to talk about. I think right now, I just want to say, like, I mean, obviously, creators and organizations like yourself that, look out to these first time indie creators and start small projects and want to help support and do things to be involved and get excited about it. I've had a lot of people reach out to me and say that, like, hey, this is a really cool idea. What can I do to help? And those things just melt my heart. I'm a sucker for humanistic properties. I mean, when everything boils down to crud and everything goes away, all we're going to have is each other. We're the most valuable resource on the planet. And the support that I have gained from the communities has been invaluable. And there's no way I'd be here pursuing my dream if all those people wouldn't be reaching out to me and trying to help, such as yourself, other creators, other content producers that like see this and see my passion and want to be a part of it. And so I just want to say thank you to you guys, and thank you to everybody else out there that has reached out to me and has supported me in this campaign, because I wouldn't be here otherwise. So
it is. I genuinely think we have one of the loveliest communities going. I've seen I've seen you comment on Facebook on some of the groups and things, and the responses are so, they're considered. People really want to help. They don't just want to be able to tick a box to say I've commented and left it. People want to be involved, and they want to offer support, and they want to give you things. So yeah, I fully agree. I'd offer the same thanks to our community and the same reasons, because we all love talking about games and do these sorts of things. Give us an excuse to do so. So always a great thing. Yes. Okay, so I would say to everybody, keep an eye out for the Kickstarter. It may be live right now, but hopefully I'll have this just in time so that you can see it in advance. I wish you the very best of luck with the Kickstarter itself. I'm sure it's going to go swimmingly. But thank you so much for joining me. It's been really great talking to you today.
Yes, Charlie, thank you so much. It's been a pleasure being on here with you. I greatly appreciate the opportunity. Thanks so much.
No problem. I'll pop all the links in the description for anybody that wants to sign up or check it out. And then just leave any comments that you have, any questions you have between us. I'm sure we'll be able to answer them. But as well, again, it gives us an opportunity to talk about games, and that's always a great thing. So make sure you comment. Let us know what you're thinking. Let us know if you've backed, if you're thinking about it. It's all going to be great fun. We'll have a great conversation. Thanks ever so much, guys.